So, Errol, I've come to know you as a father, an engineer, an artist in your own way. But I wanted to ask, if you were going to introduce yourself to the world, how would you describe who you are?
Well, I'm one of those little 13-year-old boys that I used to know when Sputnik was launched. We were all mirrors of each other, absolutely jumping up and down about everything that was going on, and that we live in the atomic age, and in those days, bragging to each other, our atomic bombs can destroy more than your atomic bombs can destroy. We can destroy everybody, and so on. That's the way we spoke in those days.
Yeah.
And of course, yes, and I've grown up like that, and I've raised my sons like that. Difficult to choose careers for your daughters because they have their own ideas. But I can honestly say this, my sons are much the same as me. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can relate to can't relate to the daughters because obviously I have 5 boys. Yeah. So Errol, what's something that the world doesn't know about you, or perhaps might even misunderstand?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't want to say the world doesn't know about me. I mean, I grew up extremely poor. I mean, poor people were wealthy compared to the way I grew up. My father had been in the military for 6 years, came out of the war. He was basically mentally crippled. He was in crypt analyst, and some of his colleagues were actually caught and executed by the Italians of all people. And he came out a shaking wreck. My mother loved him, and she married him. She was a refugee from Liverpool, and we lived in one room. In fact, we eventually got 2 rooms. I never had a bed until I was about 10 years of age. I never mind a bedroom. But it was a very interesting life because the other immigrants would come to the place where we lived in Hillbrow, and I would meet them all and listen to their songs late into the night because I had nowhere to sleep until they left. My parents had a little lounge and a piano, and the Irish and so forth would come and sing their songs, and blame everything on the rest of the world, and then, different people. So, yes, that is something so I had to work my way out of that, So, for example, in my case and my brother's case, who's a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons, we would never have been able to go to university without people sponsoring us. So I was sponsored by Anglo, and my brother was sponsored by Norristown Laboratories.
No, incredible. I mean, obviously, as I've got to know you and had the privilege of getting to know you over the last nearly 3 years, 2.5 more or less.
Yes.
I feel like you've had many lives because you have so much wisdom, and as a man who's got so much to tell. And I'd like to ask the question of what chapter of your life do you feel you're in now?
In recent months or so, or rather in the last few years, that people have been quite interested in my political opinion about things. So this was the case many, many years ago, like 50 years ago, when I was elected to the Pretoria City Council, I was the first English-speaking person to be elected to the Pretoria City Council in about 30 years. And, it was unheard of in Pretoria in the height of apartheid. And I was then interviewed regularly by the English press because they could get no response from the Afrikaans press. And so I'm back to that kind of thing nowadays in the last, 5 or 6 years, ongoing interviews about what I think about this and what I think about that. Yeah.
Now, certainly, I've noticed even in the short time that I've known you as a friend, that you have definitely had much more of a ongoing platform to give your opinion on these things, which clearly matters. So, and I know you're very busy doing continue to do that. Let me ask you, Errol, what inspires your heart more than your mind?
Well, I think the friends you have and your close and your family, I mean, and of course, if things seem to be going well in the country or in the world, and in the directions that you believe in, for example, things that have made us and me feel really unhappy. England is the source of us all, and I say England. I'm sort of forced to. I'm being told I'm going to say UK. No, England is the source of us all, and so when we see what's happening in England now with the socialists and this new government and everything that they've got, and they're jailing people for Facebook posts and things like that, you worry. You start to worry because, that's England was the place that made us. And don't we owe England to give them something back, get rid of those kind of people for them?
And Errol, if you're looking back, what would you say is the one thing that you are most proud of?
That's difficult to say. I'm proud of the fact that I managed to survive 2 divorces. Divorce is a catastrophe.
Yeah.
I always, shake the hand of some guy who can get by a divorce and say, well, I'm just thinking, for example. But there's other things, that you're proud of. But I guess, in a nutshell, or sort of on a funny level, that would be, but I'm quite proud of that. I never thought I would survive either divorce.
Yeah. Well done, So,
yeah.
In terms of myself, I have a background in working in genetics and genetic testing and DNA testing. So the topic of DNA is actually quite close to some of the things I've done in my past. And, as you know, we inherit half our DNA from our mother, and we obviously have the other half from our father. And so when you look at your children, Elon, Kimball, Tosca, Rose, Rush, for example, do you ever reflect on parts of yourself that you live through them by way of your DNA?
Well, yes, of course. I'm told by their mothers, though, that they have 90% of their mother's DNA and only 10% of my DNA. All the mothers tell me that. So that's, I suppose, something to be grateful for. And, No, I obviously look for traits that I have in the children, and I'm quite grateful for seeing the mother's traits in the children, quite frankly, because I'm not perfect. So it's very nice to see some of their traits. I look at my little 7-year-old son. He's got to be the fastest thing on 2 legs I've ever seen. He wins all these races, and that's because his mother is like an athlete. If you know, she's a real athlete. So with me, I was always lost. I was confident that I would always be last.
Or just so you know, we can actually, with your permission, we can actually at some point test to see whether your son has the Olympic gene.
Yeah.
And the Olympic gene happens to be called ACTN3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's many studies now that...
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, so there are many studies that show that if you have a variation of the ACTN3 gene, you most likely, if you wanted to, because genetics is about genetics and environment.
Yeah.
If you have the right genetics, and in this case, your son Rush is the fastest thing on 2 legs, and you put him in the right environment, then absolutely he could be maybe an Olympian himself.
Well, he's got 1 speed. He's got 2 speeds: stop and go.
Yeah. No. So, have you ever, for the purpose of health, done a DNA test?
No, I haven't actually. I know that you can do it these days quite reasonably. It's not that expensive anymore.
Yeah, that you can, and obviously, as medical science evolves, genetics really have a role in understanding what your predispositions are to things such as cancer, lifestyle diseases, and even most recently, you can work out, what sports individuals should play, what skills they should have. It's amazing. DNA definitely has started to give us insight into medicine like never before.
Yes.
As AI will start to do by essentially reading and understanding the DNA code better.
Yeah.
So the question would be, if you did this DNA test and you learned about your genetics and your predispositions, is that something you'd want to share with others? Do you think there's a learning from that? Or would you want to, for example, test your children? So, to your younger children to determine if they have a predisposition to any diseases. So you would make the right...
Obviously, to anything of a disease nature, I would be very much inclined to inform the children, if I was predisposed to something. And no question about that at all, obviously.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is, part of this conversation is about your health.
Yes,
and about your health discovery.
Having a DNA test then becomes quite important.
It does. And a great example I like to, in fact, most or many people cite quite regularly, is the case of Angelina Jolie. So Angelina Jolie had a double mastectomy.
Yes.
And the reason she did that was because... Yes. And the reason she did that and used it as a...
Her mother died from that.
Exactly. And she had family members that had the genetic predisposition to breast cancer.
Yes.
Looking at what's called the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes.
Yes.
And knowing that her genetic predisposition i.e. the DNA she inherited from mum and dad,
Yeah.
made her highly likely genetically to get that.
Yes.
Noting her environment and the people that had passed in her family, as a result of that, she took quite a big decision to do something about it. And I guess that really, brings me to the next set of our questions about the genetics of cancers, things like prostate cancers, and what to do about them. I mean, certainly from my perspective, I'd be a little bit hesitant in testing my children, even though I knew it's the right thing, because as a parent, I think you just don't really want to discover something about your child, because certainly in my eyes, they're perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and but I do think the world is moving to a place of trying to make people become more aware about their genetic code, become more aware about their health,
Yes,
and do something about it. So Errol, you're a remarkable man, and have a remarkable family. I think there's no doubt about that. One could say you are the most remarkable father in the world as a result of your family, but you are your own person in your own right. And what I'm alluding to, do you think that the genetic code, your genetic code, is some sort of code of greatness that could, by virtue of what's within it, inspire others to understand their own potential?
Well, I wouldn't be so big-headed to think like that, but and I was always surrounded by colleagues who were equally bright, so we've had a bit of good fortune maybe. But if I was in a position to help with anything like that, I would certainly do it. Yeah, obviously.
Then I think, as I indicated, as we learn more about the genetic insights of people and what traits people obtain from their genetics, we're able to make a difference by what we do with that information. So I think over time, sharing insights from your genetics with your children or otherwise, I think will help do exactly that. Errol, recently you shared with me as a friend a personal health story.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could share with the audience who are listening to this, watching this, a bit about the personal health story, what happened and what actually you did.
Well, yes. A few years ago, I hadn't, again, quite surprisingly, I went for a flying medical, and the flying medical doctor, in fact, sort of rushed me to a cardiologist, and I had an open heart operation as a result of that. Years later, I keep going back for checkups and so on. I'm all right. I had a valve replacement, and in my heart. And last year, when I went for my checkup at the beginning of last year, they said to me, with the many blood tests they do, that I have a raised PSA. It wasn't particularly raised, but it was raised. I was advised to go to a urologist and have that looked at. I went to a urologist, and he asked me to come back, which brings me to a rather sort of comical aspect, and that is that I always thought when you go in to see a doctor and he's going to tell you that you have cancer, that he first tells you to sit down comfortably and maybe offers you a cup of tea and asks you if you're comfortable, would you like a cushion and so forth. They don't do that. They don't do that. You barely sat down on a hard bench chair and they've said, you have cancer. And so after seeing the urologist, he said to me, I have cancer of the prostate. So I said, well, what now? So he said, well, we can remove the prostate and then we have to see what's left. So I agreed. And in fact, I was due to go overseas to a function that you had actually arranged. And I wasn't able to go. So I went for this operation and they removed my prostate. And then I was going to go back again and see, as months went by, what the situation is subsequently. And the urologist advised me that they took out the prostate and also all the I forget the name of the nodes or something, lymph nodes on the right side of. They cleared that all out as well, and And as I've been going back, they've told me I don't seem to have a problem at this point, anyway.
Thank God, and pleased.
Well, yes,
yeah, pleased to hear that the result of the surgery was successful.
Well, yes, And of course, I've always thought about this kind of thing, as we all no doubt think about it. What happens if somebody tells you that one day? And quite frankly, when you get told about it, it's almost like, it's not that so bothersome at all, really.
So you're saying that when you were told, I mean, what went through your mind? I mean, you have young children, you have a rich life of community, and
I must say, even though I was that age, 77 or something, 77 or so, 76, that I had really very little knowledge of cancer. I really didn't know what cancer was. I had no idea what it was. And even though I thought I did through the years, picking it up, I think we sort of avoid learning about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started learning about it, then I started to realize, it's simply the body shutting down certain organs with cells that do not function. They simply take over and basically go over to it's like putting a car in neutral. Mm-hmm. So every little cell just basically goes into neutral. It's no longer working anymore. And that organ dies. And if it's a very important organ, like your kidneys or something like that, you die.
Mm.
Or you have to get kidney removed and you go on dialysis or something like that. But, or if it's your lungs, well, you die. And it didn't seem so scary after that, And I think, I imagine if you were a very young person, in 40s, 50s or something, and this happened to you, you'd feel cheated. But when you are a little older, you don't feel like you've been cheated,
Mm. I mean, it's quite profound, actually, that you are able to, say so easily that you took the decision to have that surgery and you've overcome that, and, you move on with life as if it has not happened.
Yes.
But the fact is, it's quite a big thing to do as a man, as a male. And I just would like to understand, I mean, your feelings of that, are they as black and white that you've got over it's fine? Or, because I'm thinking about it from the perspective of many men in the world who maybe don't go and get checked in terms of their prostate.
Yes, I think that is the thing.
Yeah.
That is, I'm glad that I was advised to go for the checkup. In fact, I didn't have to. I was advised by the cardiologist to go and see a urologist. And I did. And there are many times, perhaps in the past, when I think possibly I've been advised to go and see somebody about something, or people and people don't do it. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the result is not so good. But these days, it's easier to have tests and checkups than it's been for a long time.
May I ask, did the doctor give you a sort of a decision that said, Errol, you're either going to get your prostate removed,
yes,
or we're going to keep an eye on you to continue to monitor your PSA values?
No.
How did you, I mean, the decision to have it removed, was that a precautionary thing? Was it a direction you got to do it?
No, the biopsy showed that the prostate was carcinomas.
Okay.
Had carcinoma.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a question of deleting it.
So
it's a question of stopping such cells from spreading.
So definitely the right decision in terms of maintaining life.
Yes, unfortunately, it was. They didn't suggest to me that there was an alternative. They said, you must have this removed. And medical practitioners in South Africa, Cape Town particularly, are quite good.
Mm-hmm.
So, I took their advice.
So if you had known earlier that a simple DNA test
could
give you an indication of your predisposition to prostate cancer,
yes,
would that encourage you to have?
Of course. Absolutely. In fact, I would have preferred not to lose my prostate.
Yeah.
So I would have preferred to have had a DNA test, and the DNA test led me to a doctor who said, let's do this, this, and this. And that's the end of any potential, sort of cancer of the prostate. That would be far, far better for me, because there are quite a few downs having lost your prostate for a man,
I mean, certainly your PSA level that was high, or out of range, as they call it, was obviously noticed as a result of a checkup that you're having as a regular checkup.
Yes.
A coincidental checkup. Is that what you said?
It was coincidental. And the PSA level that I had was 7. And my brother said, who's a medical specialist, he said, that's nothing. Some people's PSA are 20.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw the urologist, he said, we must do a biopsy. When they did the biopsy, the pathologist noted carcinoma, adenocarcinoma.
Mm.
In other words, the beginning cells of cancer, new cancer, adeno cancer.
Yeah.
And after the prostate was removed, you do a test like every 6 weeks or so, or something to that effect. And then I've had 0, PSA 0, or then less than 0.
Mm-hmm.
It started, it's PSA less than 0. No.
Oh, well, fantastic. I mean, and I think the key message, as I understand it from what you're saying, is prevention is better than cure.
Well, obviously.
Yeah. And if you had the ability to do a DNA test that said you had a predisposition to these sorts of cancers, you'd encourage regular
Yes.
checkups.
No, I mean, it's very few people would even be aware that there's a possibility of having these DNA tests.
Yeah.
And my last experience with a DNA test was that it cost $100.
Yeah.
So it's so inexpensive now that not to have a DNA test is just plain silly.
Well, let me ask a question, if I may. There's actually a stigma around prostate health and men talking openly about it, about these sorts of things. How do you think we could change that?
I didn't notice a stigma. I would imagine people would be wary of having something to the effect of, I don't know, maybe brain cancer or something like that would make them feel that there's some sort of stigma. I don't know. I would hate to think of that. I can't imagine. I didn't feel any stigma attached to it. It seemed a normal sort of thing to me. I don't view cancer in the same peculiar, frightening way that I did. Don't even talk about it. I don't want to mention the name. Now I know it's simply cells switching themselves to neutral. They don't work anymore. They're still there. They don't work anymore.
But it goes without saying, you have a unique opportunity by virtue of you being Errol Musk.
Yes.
To help men that might feel there's a stigma to think about it in a different way.
No, I agree with you. They should think about it it shouldn't be a stigma. I mean, that's silly. I mean, some things, might be, I can't think what they might be, but some things people might be embarrassed about, but I can't think what they are at the moment. Did you say to be embarrassed about?
Well, what did your children and family say about this?
Well, the sons are always, okay, how bad is it? It's not even a sentence. Okay, you tell them, let's say, okay, how bad is it? That's how my sons, 2 sons, might tell grown sons. And you say, well, the doctor says this, and they say, okay, keep us informed. That's your sons. You tell your daughters by way of a slow introduction. Over about 3 days.
Yeah.
You sort of talk about the subject, and until they finally say, why are you telling us this? Have you got something wrong? You say, no. And then slowly, by the 3rd day, you say, look, I have actually got to have a part of me removed because it is, and at which point they burst into tears. And you can't continue the conversation.
And they were there in hospital supporting you? And
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Then the minute you go into hospital, they're at the bedside, having flown, for 30 hours.
Yeah.
They're there in this case, from the United States. They're at your bedside.
And I mean...
the men, they don't do that, no.
Yeah. And why don't they do that?
The daughters?
No, the men.
It's a man thing. I can't explain a man
They
thing.
hide their emotions on it.
Well, they hide their emotions, and they're equally concerned, of course. There's no question about that. But they... it's... whatever it is to a man to do that, you show concern. Oh, my sons would have said to me, besides that, do you need any money? And my answer would have been no. So your sons would be, listen, I just need to tell you, I have been diagnosed with cancer of such and such an organ. Okay, how bad is it? Well, they say I have to have the organ removed. Okay, they say, do you need any money? You say, no. They say, okay, keep us informed.
Did you keep them informed?
Yes, of course.
And what
That's
was
one man to another.
And what did you say when you came out the other end of the...
Well, actually, I haven't gone to the extent of saying or presuming that I've been okay. And they haven't asked. And I've told the daughters. So I leave it for them to ask me, am I okay? And they presume that I would tell them if it's not looking too good, So again, it's a man thing, the type of communication. People often ask me, how often do I speak to Elon, for example? And I speak to him, but it's on WhatsApp or email and sometimes by voice. And if I were to phone both of my sons, one of whom I had lunch with the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi about 8 weeks ago, if I were to phone them and say, how was your week? They would immediately say to me, Dad, so the cancer's bad. You know what I mean? If I were to phone and say, so I'm just phoning to ask you how your week was, Elon would say to me, okay, Dad, so you're telling me the cancer's come back. Men are different. Do you follow?
I understand, absolutely.
My reasoning? Yeah. I would say, no. And what are you telling me? What are you saying? That would be the gist of the thing,
Father-son conversation.
Yeah.
They know you well.
Yeah.
They know what to ask, what not to ask.
So if I were to phone them now and say, how was your week,
They'll say something's wrong.
Whereas if I don't phone my daughters and ask them how their week was, they ask me what's going on. So with your daughters, it's like that, and with your sons, it's not like that. In my case, in any case. And as I say, if I'd said to one of my sons, I'm just phoning to see how your week was, they would immediately presume I have some bad news.
Because it's out of the norm, right? So it's interesting, and I'm sure anybody who's listening to this will be very grateful for your insights of the experience. It's very personal to you, and you sharing that with the world. And certainly, I would hope that by you sharing it with the world and being here today, so full of beans and energetic, and and confidently positive, will actually help men around the world understand that you can have prostate cancer, you can prevent prostate cancer as you can other diseases, but actually it's doing something about it that really matters. And I think the fact that you took a decision to live, to do something about it, and be here to tell the tale in the way you do is very powerful. And but just if you could very briefly just demystify the whole surgery experience. Is it a week? Do you feel better after a week, after 2 weeks? Like you go surgery,
6 weeks.
Takes about 6 weeks, and I guess you feel like crap in the process, and then you come out. How soon does it take for you to go through the surgery and then get to the other end and be able to sit like you have done all day?
Well, and feel strong.
Yes.
I would say 3 months. Although the doctor said to me 12 months, and so I'm not 12 months yet. The doctor said to me 12 months before you feel all right, feel good again. The physiotherapist, on the other hand, who were the most forthcoming, most amazing guys I've ever met. In fact, I have a whole new sort of, group that I admire now. That's physiotherapists who I never thought of before. But I had the physiotherapists, and their information and the things they did for me was extraordinary, much better than the doctors. The doctors are like mechanics. They don't really do much.
Or engineers.
They're like engineers.
Yeah.
And the physiotherapists told me, an extraordinary person, and there were like 3 of them, but the main man, don't expect to feel better for 18 months. And in my case, I felt quite a lot better at about 3 months. For the first 6 weeks, I actually felt pretty awful.
Awful in what way?
Well,
I think people need to hear that you tell a positive story today, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But you have to go through something to get to where you are, and in your case, it seems to be a lot less time than the doctors said it would take to actually be completely sort of rebuild your strength.
Well, awful. I mean, you feel no strength. Your body feels weak. Your legs are weak. You just feel old, and you don't feel very good. And I had the marvelous experience of being released from hospital. This is actually on the lighter side. From hospital in July last year. And my ex-wife came with me, and she stayed in the in a hotel while I had this, and then I was released, and after 5 days or so, and then we drove back together, and I had a bottle with catching the effluent from my body, and I had it carried around with me, you see. And on that particular day, it decided to start snowing in the Cape Town, which had never snowed in the Cape Town for 50 years. It started snowing, and then our car broke down halfway back home, which was 100 kilometers away.
Gosh.
So 50 kilometers into the trip, the car broke down. So there I was under the car with my bottle, having just had my prostate removed, trying to figure out what was wrong with the car, which we weren't able to solve, and people came and fetched us. But that's just on the funnier side of things. But it does take about, I'm told, I'm very happily looking forward to the 18 months that the physiotherapists advised me. But certainly I can tell you that it took 3 months before I felt I could negotiate, a lot of stairs and a lot of long walking and stuff like that. And in that 3 months following that operation, I went on many trips overseas. And it was quite terrorizing to me to spend, 2 weeks I spent in Dubai as a guest of the government, and being asked to walk long distances in the palaces that they had, and upstairs and things like that, because I wasn't up to it. And I'm much better now. And I'm looking forward to the doctor's 12 months and the physiotherapist's 18 months point.
And just to ask the physiotherapists, what exactly do they do? Do they help you re-walk again? What's the process there?
Well, it's a lot of things, that they do. So it's really hard to go into all of that. They do a lot of things across your body.
Okay.
And they advise you, give you a lot of good advice as well. Talk to you about what you should do, how you should work with your muscles, how you should not let your muscles deteriorate, and so forth,
So would you say that, obviously I'd love to get a view on whether this is a aha moment for you. Is it a reflection point when you look at yourself as to what you've just gone through recently, and how you are somewhat lucky to have succeeded?
Yes.
Going through what you've gone through, finding it early enough to build longevity for you moving forward in your family.
Yeah.
So how is it some sort of aha moment? Do you look at things differently? Do you see the world differently? Do you see the future differently in terms of what you could do through the narrative of health and preventative health?
Well, yes. I'm very aware, much more aware than I think many people can, of what is available out there for people, what you can have done. And recently I was in Dubai again, or UAE, and I met a woman who have frozen the embryos, fertilized embryos, even chosen the sex of their child. And the things that are available for them one day to have a child, when their careers may be dying down, the sort of things that are available to people today, such as your DNA testing and the things that I've experienced, it's marvelous. It's absolutely incredible, enabling longevity, as you say, because it was only a little while ago that these sort of things were taking people out in their 60s.
Absolutely. Medical science is evolving so quickly, and longevity is a key topic.
Yes.
And, talking about longevity, and you living much, much longer, what would you hope to see around you, in terms of developments around you, in terms of whether it's politics in the US, for example, which I know is a topic you love to.
Well, what I'm interested in, what I'm saying, what I do notice is I'm 78. So is Donald Trump, oddly enough. And so it's impossible to not compare. And I look at other people that I knew that were 78 in my time as a youth. And what I remember of people of 78 around me is the heavy breathing, things like that. And I say to myself, things have improved a great deal, because at 78 I can now, well, I'm still getting there, I suppose, with the recent thing, but I'm able to keep up with most guys of about 30, 40, without too much trouble.
Well, I have to tell you that I do often speak to you, and you're very busy doing something, and often doing interviews, whether it's radio interviews, television interviews, podcasts.
Yes.
Completing
But it's not only me. I have seen others like myself.
I know, and it is remarkable that the gift of health has sort of helped many do things at an age that maybe, as you said, many years ago they would not have been able to do.
Exactly.
So I
and oddly enough, I'd just like to add, I mentioned it for some reason there are other places I go to as well, but talking about the UAE, I happened to come across two men of 105.
Oh, really?
In the UAE.
Mm-hmm.
And I was absolutely overwhelmed by the energy and the sparkle in their eyes and their just general ability. The one is unfortunately fell, so he's in a wheelchair, but otherwise unusual. I wouldn't have expected that. It was just too much to
inspirational. I would say
inspirational. Right? Yes.
So as long as if I may, in my view, as long as the body and mind can function.
Yes, I was very impressed by handshakes with these men and feeling a hand that was lean but mean.
so on that topic, Errol, if I said to you, what does living longer mean for you? What does living longer mean for you?
Well, I think you get to an age where you start to realize you're on sort of borrowed time. You're past your expiry time, which is supposed to be 70 or used to be. But again, if you go back into history, people often talk about living to 120. And if you look at the Vedas of India, they talk about even longer ages that people live to. And of course, in the Bible, they go wild. They talk about people living, Enoch to 350 and Methuselah to 750 and so on. So it's very, strange. But I would say that the human mind is accustomed to accepting your circumstances. And as you get older, you accept your circumstances. You've had your turn. You don't feel like you should, you should be crying about your circumstances if you're older. I would imagine, though, if you were a person, as I said earlier, maybe, if you're a person of, 40 or 50 or something and or less or 30s, and you suddenly discover you have some life-threatening disease, I would imagine you might feel cheated, but not at my age.
Certainly lived a very active, healthy life with lots of chapters in it, as I alluded to earlier. It's interesting. I actually heard Elon say only a couple of days ago that a mission to Mars, where up to 1 million people will be on Mars, is approximately, say, 20 years away from now.
Yes, I heard him say that. It's very it's sad that he's actually accepted reality. He was so hoping that it would be sooner than that. And, Elon, while we're on that topic, would like to be where he is now with SpaceX, say 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe 7 or 8 years ago. He would have liked things to have moved a little faster. The Biden administration made development for SpaceX very difficult. They were out and out trying to put a spoke in SpaceX as well. In fact, Biden wouldn't let them collect or rescue the 2 stranded astronauts. Biden refused to allow it. As far as Biden was concerned, they were dead. They must just leave them. Because for political reasons, it would have looked good for Elon and Trump.
I understand, and I know that's the
terrible.
That's a terrible situation. That's well.
Elon always hoped that within 2 years he'd have something on Mars, but the reality has struck him that it's going to be longer.
But interesting from your longevity health perspective, would you like to be here another 20 years plus to be able to see something happen on Mars?
Of course,
I'd love to know what you'd.
I would. I dread the idea of being sort of having to be aided around or something. I'm still as able as I was at the age of 30. So I dread the idea of being. I still fly, so I dread the idea of being a sort of cripple or something, or can't get about. While I'm on that, I was asked a while back why I see so well. And the reason I see so well is the lenses that were in my eyes, the natural lenses, were removed a few years ago and replaced by artificial lenses. So, in fact, both my eyes have artificial lenses. And with artificial lenses, I can read a paper that you are holding over there a small print from here, as strange as it may be.
Like I've only got good things here to say.
No, it's very real. I can read everything from a distance. I don't need any kind of reading aid.
No, and tools like this will become much more readily available to all.
Yes.
And the reason I say that, Errol, is because I wonder, in today's world, sadly, DNA testing and diagnostic testing and all the tools that are used for preventative health are only, or seemingly only, available to the privileged. And how does one bring that to the masses who maybe can't afford to get these sorts of tests, but definitely deserve to live longer? And
certainly in the first world and much of the third world, a lot of the third world that I've seen, there's a lot available. We are a sort of mixture here in this country of third and first world. But even to the third world people, the hospitals are available. We have a lot of foreign doctors who come here to work for the government to actually gain experience. So they accept the smaller salaries here to gain a couple of years of intensive experience, and then they go back to their home countries, wherever that may be, and with that experience. So my own experience is that it's up to you. There obviously are people who have absolutely no opportunity, but I'm talking about in many cases it is available. It's just up to you. It's just up to you.
Well, of course, the enablement of satellite communication and therefore connectivity for the disconnected individuals that can't get access to internet will eventually even play a role in health benefit for all. And the reason that will be, as we will start to see more and more of, is in remote locations where diagnosis is needed with medical information on an individual in a very short time, the connectivity that's given to the world through satellites and others is going to really make that happen.
Connectivity is what it's all about.
Exactly. Just in terms of this journey, what do you hope to witness in your lifetime? And I don't say remaining lifetime on purpose, because as far as I'm concerned, where the world is going is into a space of creating longevity, and hopefully the work that you do, which we'll come on to in a minute and hope to do in the future, will help drive research and awareness on how people can actually live longer. And that's what we hope. So in the context of that, in your lifetime, for yourself, for your children, for the world, what do you still hope, if you could give me one or two things, what you still hope to witness happen?
Well, in longevity, I would imagine that it's not far away that we will start getting breakthroughs that will tell people that under certain correct circumstances, you can exceed 100 years. And you may even, in due course, the average lifespan might be 120 years. Bear in mind that before the First World War, the average lifespan of a European woman was 39 years. I'll repeat that. Before the First World War, the average lifespan of a European white woman was 39 years. It's now 85 years. So that's double. And, so it's possible with the improvements that are available that and the discoveries that are being made, and with the DNA testing being done, that people will live much longer and more productive lives. We already see people being, in the 60s, and they seem very much like the people we used to know in the 50s when they were, that 50-year-old people. And sometimes we see 70-year-old people, and we say, hey, wait a minute, this guy's 70. He behaves like a man who's not even 60. We see this all the time, if you know what I'm saying. And even me, I'm 78. They say, well, I'm more like somebody who's 68 or something like that. I get people saying to me, I'm not sure what a person who's 68 is like. I just remember that my father at 68 died. He could barely walk. So, he had succumbed so much, and people like him. So we are entering a new sort of era. And just briefly, when I was in Dubai, I met people who could, from a drop of blood from your finger, can recreate your physical appearance.
Using your DNA.
They can take your blood from your finger and recreate what you look like to the about 85% of what you actually look like. from a drop of blood from your finger. It's almost so hard to believe, but
it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this takes me to another final topic, is you're in the process of, let's call it ideating a venture around health diagnostics and longevity.
Yes.
To be called something like KEM, as I understand it, still to be confirmed and finalized. If you had a healthcare venture of sorts, what would you want that venture to achieve?
Yes, well, if I had a healthcare venture, I would like it to be along the lines of longevity, obviously. I mean, my younger son spends his life producing only whole foods, only natural grown foods. Spent the last 20 years educating Americans into not eating genetically modified foods. So it's almost a family thing. And in that respect, if I look at my two sons, Elon and Kimball, take Kimball, whom I had lunch with a few weeks ago. He certainly looks as though he could be 38, 35, 36, 38, 37. He's 52. He does not look 52. And one can ascribe that to the fact that he focuses only on eating natural whole foods, naturally grown vegetables and so forth, So I think people are heading that way, and obviously you are what you eat. I'm not an expert on this kind of thing, but I would say that people are becoming aware of the fact that I don't have to be 60 and a crippled old man or crippled old woman.
Yeah,
I can be a 60-year-old woman and still be very attractive to men and to myself.
No, thank you for that. I mean,